You're staring at a single unwashed coffee cup sitting on your desk. Or maybe it's a short text message that needs nothing more than a simple 3-word reply. To anyone else in the room, the gap between noticing that object and completing the task would require almost no effort at all. See the cup, pick it up, rinse it. Done. It's a seamless translation of intention into movement, something so automatic it barely registers as a decision. But for you, the distance between knowing and doing feels less like a step and more like a vertical wall. Your body is fine. You're not sick. You didn't run a marathon. You're not running on 2 hours of sleep. And yet there's this heavy, invisible gravity holding you in place. Your wrists feel anchored. Your legs feel glued to the floor. Commanding your body to move forward demands an enormous, agonizing surge of internal fuel. You burn through limited reserves just trying to overcome the brutal friction of starting. By the time you finally rinse the cup or type the reply, the effort feels wildly disproportionate to the result. A 30-second task cost you something that feels like half a day's energy. This is the quiet paradox that chips away at your sense of self. When night falls, the exhaustion you feel isn't the satisfying tiredness of meaningful work. It's the hollow fatigue of an engine revving violently in neutral. You've spent hours locked in a silent gridlock inside your own mind, draining your battery to zero while appearing perfectly still to the outside world. From the outside, your stillness looks like a choice. The world runs on an assumption of seamless translation. If a capable adult sees a messy desk, the action to clean it should follow naturally. If there's a quick phone call to make, the call should happen. Because the action looks physically light, the mental effort is assumed to be light as well. So when you don't do it, people don't see neurological gridlock. They see refusal. They assume you don't care enough, that you lack discipline, that you're being careless with shared time or space. The interpretation is swift and often merciless, irresponsible, unmotivated, lazy. Now you're not just battling the weight of the task itself, you're battling the awareness of how your inaction is being read. To survive this constant misreading, you start masking. You nod along when someone tells you to just do it. You pretend that a better planner or a new morning routine will fix the disconnect. You agree that you need to be more disciplined. You absorb the judgment and turn it inward. You apologize. You over-explain. You hide the evidence of stalled functioning. But this performance has a cost. The energy required to manage the social fallout of your paralysis is drawn from the same depleted reservoir you need to actually start the task. Every apology drains more fuel. Every attempt to defend yourself burns through what little activation energy you had left. The exhaustion you feel doesn't come from washing a dish or sending a text. It's cognitive. It's an invisible hemorrhage of mental fuel spent pacing inside a locked internal room. When you sit frozen at the edge of your bed, staring at a basket of unfolded laundry, your brain isn't resting. It's redlining. You're running a high-stakes simulation of the task, visualizing every micro-step. Stand up, pick up a shirt, fold it, stack it, repeat. You mentally perform the action 100 times, but your body never crosses the starting line. Neurologically, that internal simulation consumes the same bandwidth as physical execution. By noon, you've spent the energetic equivalent of a full workday without moving an inch. To understand this paralysis, you have to look beyond the flawed concept of willpower and examine the architecture of the brain. The frontal lobe acts as your command center. It sequences actions, manages transitions, initiates movement. In a well-regulated system, the instruction to clean a room automatically breaks down into smaller, manageable steps. The process feels fluid and mostly unconscious. But when executive function misfires, that sequencing system jams. If this moved you, comment 9 right now. If it didn't, comment 0. Your voice matters. Take 1 second and share it. The minor chore doesn't appear as a series of simple actions. It appears as one monolithic wall of demand. Your brain interprets the task as a threat to its already strained energy reserves. It triggers a protective shutdown. At the same time, it recognizes urgency. Adrenaline spikes. Cortisol floods your system. You feel the panic of a looming obligation. The pressure builds. But the neurological bridge that converts that panic into forward momentum is missing. It's like pressing the gas pedal while the emergency brake is fully engaged. The friction doesn't move you forward. It just burns out the engine. Transitioning from a resting state, or even from passive scrolling, to active effort requires a complex cognitive gear shift. In a regulated system, dopamine lubricates that shift. It lowers the activation energy needed to begin. When executive dysfunction is present, that lubrication is dry. Your frontal lobe scans the minor task, make the call, sort the mail, brush your teeth, and calculates a catastrophic energy deficit. It flags the task as metabolically expensive and potentially destabilizing. The paralysis that follows isn't rebellion, it's protection. Your nervous system is trying to conserve resources it believes are dangerously low. Because this calculation happens below conscious awareness, you interpret the sudden loss of agency through the only framework society offers: moral failure. You sit there watching yourself not move and conclude something darker. You're not just struggling with a task. You are the kind of person who can't handle basic adulthood. Broken, defective, fundamentally flawed. Every time you stare at the unwashed cup and feel that sickening weight, the identity loop reinforces itself. You try to force ignition with sheer willpower. You yell at yourself internally. You promise to try harder. But willpower is a blunt instrument. Your system requires chemical lubrication, not moral aggression. The failure confirms the verdict. The energy meant for the chore gets cannibalized by shame. You enter a brutal loop where the mechanism of paralysis manufactures evidence of worthlessness. But here's the structural jolt. What if your system isn't broken? What if it's functioning exactly as designed under conditions of chronic overload? Modern life demands constant cognitive microtransitions. Checking email isn't just reading text. It's evaluating tone, predicting social consequences, anticipating future tasks. Paying a bill online requires navigating hostile interfaces, recalling passwords, managing financial anxiety. Each minor task is neurologically dense. If your executive function is already strained by chronic stress, burnout, or neurodivergence, every one of these tasks becomes an energy knot. You're not producing less energy than others. Your baseline operational costs are simply higher. You're burning premium fuel just to idle in the driveway. Of course you're exhausted by mid-afternoon. Of course the cup stays on the desk. Your system has calculated that it cannot afford the transition cost without risking collapse. In response, your brain performs ruthless triage. It prioritizes catastrophic threats and public performance. It allocates scarce bandwidth to keeping your job, avoiding financial disaster, masking symptoms in high-stakes environments. You perform at work because fear of public failure triggers an emergency adrenaline override. That chemical spike temporarily forces the engine to turn over. From the outside, you look competent, capable, infinite. But the override is expensive. The moment you cross your private threshold, power is cut to everything deemed non-essential. The cup, the laundry, the casual text. These are classified as low priority. The circuit breaker trips to preserve just enough energy for tomorrow's survival performance. You are trading private well-being to fund public survival. Understanding this triage doesn't silence the shame. Knowing the cup is the cost of keeping your job doesn't erase the self-loathing. Here's why. If the paralysis is biological, not moral, you lose the comforting illusion of control. Laziness implies choice, and choice implies you could fix it tomorrow by trying harder. But if your ignition system is jammed, you can't punish yourself into motion. It's easier for your ego to believe you're undisciplined than to accept that your cognitive system is miscalibrated. Shame becomes a misguided attempt to regain power. You scream at the engine, hoping volume will replace missing fuel. The more you invest in the identity of being broken, the more bandwidth you dedicate to managing shame, the less energy remains for action. The loop feeds itself. The next time you're frozen in front of a minor task, the architecture of your immobility won't be invisible. You'll recognize the friction of the gear shift, the mathematics of energy allocation, the circuit breaker protecting what it can. But recognition alone doesn't refill the tank. The world will continue demanding seamless execution. The cup will still sit on the desk. The inbox will still blink. You are no longer blind to the mechanism, but you are still bound by its metabolic laws. The question shifts from, "Why can't I just do it?" to something more sobering. How long can you sustain the illusion of limitless capacity before the system forces a non-negotiable shutdown? The friction hasn't disappeared. It's just finally visible.